Immunocompromised patients that fulfill certain categories should be getting a dose of pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, 13-valent, in addition and subsequently get the 23-valent polysaccharide pneumococcal vaccine. So those high-risk individuals, immunocompromised, should be getting both of those vaccines, ideally prior to immunosuppression, but while being immunosuppressed if prior isn't available. In addition to pneumococcal vaccines and influenza vaccines, the zoster subunit vaccine should be administered as well. The newer zoster vaccine is a subunit vaccine, so it's not a live vaccine. This was licensed and approved by CDC and ACIP in late, this vaccine was approved for use and recommended in late 2017. It's recommended and it's available for adults age 50 and older who are either non-immunocompromised or have a low level of immunocompromising medication. However, this vaccine is increasingly being studied in more highly immunocompromised groups, including renal transplant patients, patients with hematological malignancies, and patients who have had an autologous stem cell transplant. And in all those populations, the preliminary data is very encouraging for, in some of those diseases, actual showing effectiveness of prevention of zoster episodes, and in others, at least a good serologic response that might be predictive of protection. Among biologic modifying medicines, there's really a variability on how they affect the immune system and how they affect vaccine responsiveness or even risk of vaccine-preventable infections. One extreme example is rituximab, which depletes B cells. B cells are the cells that make antibodies, so that patients that get even a single dose of rituximab essentially lose the ability to make antibodies to vaccines for a minimum of 6 and often 12 months or more. That would make it quite important to give appropriate vaccinations prior to giving rituximab therapy in order to help protect the patient. Furthermore, the duration of the rituximab effect can be quite variable. So there might be, it's not clear what to do, but certainly one could give a vaccine at 6 or 12 months after rituximab and then check for antibodies against that vaccine to see if it in fact was effective. Live vaccines are generally contraindicated in immunosuppressed patients. And that's hold true for the biologics, although the biologics vary quite a bit from compound to compound in terms of what it does to the immune system and the relative safety of vaccination. Some of the newer anti-IgE biologics, again, they would expect to have very little, if any, effect on vaccine-preventable infections in terms of the efficacy of vaccination, so that live vaccines in those populations are likely to be quite safe, despite being on that particular agent. So it really would vary with the agent. The antibodies to the tumor necrosis factor, there's very little data, but I think that the party line would be to avoid giving live vaccines such as varicella or MMR while patients are on those therapies. There's two special patient populations, solid organ transplant recipients, as well as patients with autoimmune diseases, where there's at least a theoretical concern that giving them the antigenic stimulation of a vaccine might trigger transplant rejection on the one hand, or an exacerbation of their autoimmune disease in the other patient population. In both those populations, there's been case reports where it appears that vaccine X has been given and then there was an exacerbation or a rejection episode, but there's a recent review that showed that vaccination of solid organ transplant recipients is not associated with rejection episodes. So the benefits of the vaccine are clear, and so appropriate vaccinations should be given to solid organ transplant recipients. Similarly, with triggering an episode of autoimmunity, of exacerbation of infection in patients with autoimmune disease, although there are case reports, if a patient gets the vaccine and has a flare of their autoimmune disease, the larger amount of information suggests that that's not a significant concern.